guys, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to promoting a book I wrote. It's called Follow. It's an ebook. You can find it on Amazon.com under the Kindles tab. And my book deals with a holistic view of spirituality and looking at it not just from a purely psychological standpoint, such as creativity, intuition, love, those conceptual aspects of who we are, psychological aspects, but I also focus on the earthly, which is the physical, which is the reptilian brain, which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. And so I focus on very controversial topics that we typically don't think of when it relates to spirituality, like race, sex, money. And, I really, try to tie those into spirituality as well, because they are integral to who we are as holy beings, as Christ, not Christians, but as Christ. A Christ is not just metaphysical or psychological or conceptual, or so-called quote-unquote spiritual, but a Christ is also earthly. And until we embrace the totality of who we are, we will stay earthbound, and we will not be able to ascend and get off the earth plane. So, I really, try to get into the various constructs of the matrix that divide the mind between Adam and Eve, as they call it in Christian theology, or Isis and Ra in Egyptian mythology, or in Freudian psychology, the id and the ego. I really look at, how these various constructs of the matrix, how they divide the mind between the conscious, basically the unconscious mind, or God and the devil, whatever you want to say. That's pretty much what it is in layman's terms. And I look at media and entertainment, religion, the familial structure, the government structure itself, all of these various constructs that really work to really make us two people. So when we go to sleep at night, we shed our concepts of the matrix, and we're not a man or woman, rich, poor, black, white, whatever you identify with in the matrix, Christian, Muslim, whatever. You just go to a realm where you work out your restrictions. But as an ego, you have restrictions, you have laws to follow and things like that. So if you don't, if you do not follow those laws and those rules, then you have what we call consequences that are tied to the laws of the universe, so to speak. So, in this video, I want to focus on a topic that actually was brought to my attention, recently, in reference to reparations for black people from slavery. And so, there's been, because I don't really follow the news, because, the news is just theatrics anyway. And everything I say, really, to be honest with you, is, just has symbology in another realm. So, even what I'm talking about in this particular video does not have any true, I would say, what's the word? The things I'm going to talk about really don't affect anything at the atomic level. Let me just say that. Everything that affects the atomic level or the physical universe is always brought from the metaphysical, from the metaphysics. And so, I want to keep that, I want you to keep that in mind as I really talk about these things in this video as it pertains to reparations for black people in slavery. In theory, from the level of superficial, it makes sense for black people to have reparations, for black people to have reparations for slavery, because, slavery was a time where, black people were held in bondage, and people of other races were able to, I guess you would say, flourish, and, and they really had time to, and the means, if you will, to advance their particular, race. And so, since during that time, when black people were in bondage and we were prevented and given the necessary tools to really, better, the race itself, if you think about race in a collective sense, then, it seems logical to give black people money so you can, I guess what you would say, compensate, so you can compensate for what was lost. And so in doing so, it would, from the level of the superficial, it would level the playing field for black people to say, okay, you know what, you have just as much money as the next person, so to speak. And so because of that, you know, you should be able to compete. You should be able to compete in the world just like other racial demographics. And so, you know, really, to be honest with you, I can see that perspective and that understanding as a slave. But when you look at and you whenever you ascend in the matrix and you start overstanding information, not just understanding as a slave, but overstanding, then you really start to see how things that would be considered good, if you will, are not necessarily so, and they're really bad. What's bad is good, and what's good is bad. Like, for example, there was something about Marianne Williamson. She's a presidential candidate for 2020, and she was like, she wanted to give like billions of dollars in reparations to black people. And so, you know, I really want to point out here, you know, from my, you know, esoteric knowledge I have, because I have knowledge that is accessed in another dimension, but she would be considered, you know, for black people, right, many black people had this knowledge that I have, she would be considered a wolf in sheep's clothing. Because, you know, from the superficial, it looks like, oh, she really is for black people, right? You know, black power. You know, it's like giving us money so we can, you know, really start to, you know, make some moves in the world or what have you. And so people wouldn't necessarily look down upon black people. But Marianne Williamson is associated with a mind control doctrine that causes dissociations and fractures within the mind called A Course in Miracles. And I've proven on this channel, how A Course in Miracles, if you haven't already done so, please look at the Course in Miracles videos, and how, you know, A Course in Miracles is riddled with contradictions. Whenever you're feeding contradictions into the mind, you're disintegrating the mind. And also, too, I talk about how A Course in Miracles dissociates you. And so, you know, whenever you're dissociating someone, you're altering the mind, you're altering the state of consciousness for nothing good, you know. And so, when someone like that is associated with what I would call MK Ultra monarch programming doctrine, such as A Course in Miracles, it really, you know, gives you pause to say, okay, what is really the agenda for giving, you know, black people reparations? You know, why would you do that? And so, you know, especially if you're associated with a doctrine called A Course in Miracles that feeds contradictions and alters your state of consciousness. But really, this is very telling, because the state of consciousness of people of color, especially black people, have definitely been altered. And so this is something that money is not going to fix. It's not going to fix. And so black people are definitely targeted metaphysically through the mind, or targeted through the pineal gland, because black people have a pineal gland that if it were balanced, they could manifest at will. And so really, black people don't need money at all. I'm just going to say that, because, you know, there's a difference. Black people really are considered to be the quote-unquote real Jews. And I don't want to say this to say, you know, one particular demographic of racial demographic is better than another. That's not what I'm saying. If you are watching this or what have you, and you are a different nationality than black, you were black at some point. And your reincarnation, because every time you get reincarnated, your melanin gets extracted out until eventually you become a master race, like Marilyn Monroe, of well, she wasn't a natural blonde, but, you know, eventually you will be a race of super duper blonde hair and super duper blue eyes, which means that you don't have any melanin. And your melanin is connected to your pineal gland, which gives you insight. That's why it's called the third eye in metaphysical circles. And so I'm not lying. This is what the third eye is, or the pineal gland is associated with. And that's connected really to your melanin. And they drop little innuendos and stuff like that in videos. Like if you listen to that song by Kanye West, it's called I Love It. He says in that song, like a lighter bitch, she ignorant. When you're lighter, you don't have insight to decode the matrix. The lighter you are, the more you are, you know, you really just, you know, are susceptible to information that's disseminated to you by the matrix. But any information that goes beyond the physical world, you have no access to, or you have no ability to gain access to it. And so this is what happens to you. That's why the hues of black people are a wide spectrum of hues compared to other races. So once you've gotten to your Asian races and your white race, your hue kind of falls relatively the same in line. But why is it that with black people you can get super duper light to super duper dark? This is what we call melanin theft, because they take out your melanin to take away your divinity. And if you do have melanin, you're super duper targeted within the matrix, because you would be considered to be a Jew. Not Jewish, but a Jew. There's a difference between being a Jew and being Jewish. Okay? Many Jewish people have wealth, but Jews are wealth. Let me repeat that. Many Jewish people have wealth, but Jews are wealth. And so when I say you are wealth, you don't need to go outside of yourself to get wealth. You are wealth. You can manifest wealth at will. So the thing is that the reason why blacks cannot manifest wealth at will is because the knowledge has been taken away and the pineal gland has been debased. You know, and you say to yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, within the matrix, all constructs, but especially within the music of black people, you know, because they know since slavery that, you know, our music was a source of escape, you know, if you will, when we were being battered and beaten and broken and so forth. And so they purposely used our music to debase the third eye. And how do you debase the third eye? You take your attention away from the mind and you put your attention on stuff, which is Satanism or Saturnism, okay? And so really they have made Saturn, which is connected to the third eye, the planet of consciousness connected to the third eye, Saturn, has been made Satan. And so, and I just got divine revelation, if you will, not too long ago about why Satan or Saturn is allegorically depicted as Satan in the Bible, because Saturn has an R in it. And so if you see the word Saturn, you see turn, S-A, and then you see the word turn. And so your chakras are supposed to turn, really, you know, and balance. They're supposed to turn. That's why when people do chakra work or whatever, like I remember when I took a yoga class when I was at USC, the lady, she actually had us practice the chakras. And so she had us put like a necklace over certain aspects of the body. And so she was like, if the necklace is turning in a circular motion, then you know that chakra is functioning well. But if your necklace is standing still, then that chakra is weak. There's something wrong with that chakra. So that's why Saturn, right, supposed to turn, is Satan. It just stays there. It just stays in place. And so the reason being that Saturn is turned into Satan, connected to the pineal gland, is because they have us focus on stuff as opposed to the divinity. Only the divinity makes the divine. So especially within our music, you know, it's all about stuff. It's all about sex and, you know, the body, all about sex, all about, what is it? All about, you know, just cars and houses and, you know, clothes and jewelry and stuff like that. And so whenever you're having the human being focus on the divine instead of the divinity that creates the divine, you're taking their power away. And so this is particularly, although everybody listens to hip-hop music, this is particularly aimed towards black people, okay? This is particularly aimed towards black people. And so it's everywhere. You know, it's in media and entertainment. It's everywhere. Even when you go to church, church is all about Saturnism or Satanism to me. You know, because I've, you know, although I'm no longer Christian per se, I'm a Christ. But although I'm no longer Christian, that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't listen to, you know, pastors and things like that on television, or I haven't gone, you know, I've gone to church with my mother and stuff like that. You know, really, you know, I've realized that everything is about the body. When you talk about a blessing, it's not about anything to do with your mind, but it's all about, you know, getting a financial blessing, or, you know, God healing your body, or whatever the case is. You have a sickness or something. Everything is about the material, but it doesn't go beyond the material to the etheric realms, which is your mind. And so anything that is in the physical is manifested from the metaphysical. And so when you're focusing on the physical, that means that you're insane. You're like, what? Yeah, you are insane. When you're trying to change something in the physical, you're insane. And so it's like, like there was a metaphysical teacher one time I used to follow, who was, you know, from my standards, if you will, bogus, because he really inflated the psychological mind. But he did say something that made a lot of sense. He said that trying to change something at the metaphysical level is like going to a movie and you see a fire in the movie, and so you throw water at the screen. So you throw water at it. And so this is insanity, because the fire is not, you know, real per se, you know, in a way. You know, the fire is in the movie, you know, and you're outside of the movie. And so you're trying to, you know, change something that's already been cut, you know, it's already been set. And so this kind of goes back to Egyptian mythology and not the Egyptian god Set. How Set mutilated his brother Osiris. And so Set really signifies the atomic, really signifies the material, really signifies that at the atomic level that things cannot be changed unless you have access to the metaphysical, to your divinity. And so whenever you're switching that, you're causing an inversion. This is inverted. That's why a lot of backwards priests, right, they worship the inverted cross. Okay, so everything is an inversion and perversion, really, at the atomic level. And so this is what black people are made to focus on the material. And whenever you're focusing on the material, you will never gain it. It's like, you know, chasing a butterfly. You know, you ever chase a butterfly, you'll never catch it. But if you sit still, then one will alight upon you. And, and so this is really how it works in the matrix environment. You know, everything is set, and we're trying to change what is set. And so everything at the, you know, at the physical level is bound by the laws of the universe, which corresponds to the Akashic record, which is all thoughts, actions, and emotions of a being throughout their entire incarnation. You know, and this is called the Book of Life and the Book of Revelation. And so, you know, I really wanted to point this out here, and how, you know, reparations is not really going to help to change the situation of black people. Because like I said, black people have enough melanin to manipulate matter. You know, that's like going to someone and saying, you're really super rich. And then you go to someone and say, you know, can you give me some money? I'm sorry to say, guys, this stuff is funny to me in a way. It's not funny, but it is. You know, you're like, can you give me some money, but you have all the money in the world. And they know that you're crazy. You know, it's like, you know, can you give me a car, but you have what it takes to manifest a car. It's just that the knowledge has been taken away from you. And it's been inverted, because melanin is required to manipulate matter. And I know that you say, okay, well, you know, what is she talking about? But really, it's connected to your pineal gland. Your pineal gland is what's needed to manipulate matter, and it's tied to your emotions. That's why in the movie Matilda, you know, Matilda's not black, but it kind of gives you the idea of what I'm talking about. Matilda, she could only manipulate matter when her emotions were involved. And so that's why oftentimes black people, I'm not saying this is a stereotype, but that's why oftentimes black people are seen as emotional, because of imbalancing the pineal gland. And so whenever Matilda could not manipulate matter until she got angry enough. And when she got angry enough, then, you know, she could actually, you know, work with it. And so you really don't want to manipulate matter in that type of way when you get angry, because, you know, it's not controlled, if you will. And so she kind of learns how to, Matilda, after a while, she learns how to control her what is it called? Telekinetic or telepathic, not telepathic, but telekinetic abilities after a while. But it more so is erratic when you're debasing the emotional body. And so, you know, when you're debasing the emotional body, then you really come to a place of judgment. But but how to work with our melanin, the knowledge, the esoteric knowledge of how to work with our melanin has been taken away and hidden from us, so we don't discover the treasure that's within ourselves. And so the reason why I say reparations will not help is because of the programming of the black community in particular. Everyone's programmed with Satanism, but it's more so put towards black people because they don't want you to realize your divinity. They want you to focus on stuff. They want you to focus on stuff. And so it's in our music, especially cars, jewelry, houses, you know, flashing, and you know, that type of thing. We've been literally programmed to do this and to trick off money. We've been programmed to trick off money. And the thing is that, you know, people may say, well, you know, what you're saying doesn't have validity because we can make a conscious choice. But unless you are conscious, you cannot make a conscious choice about anything within the matrix environment. And I can attest to this because even since recently, I've made choices, you know, that have not been conscious because I didn't have access to it within my pineal gland. And so, you know, if you don't have knowledge, you can't make a conscious choice. You are bound by your unconscious mind. And even in Freudian psychology, it talks about how the unconscious actually governs your conscious ego. So it's not like you can say, well, I know, unless you have information about this, you know, unless you've realized what the, you know, has been put into the music and the movies and things like that, and the commercials and stuff like that you watch on your television programming, and how when you go to church they just focus on the body and focus on money and stuff like that. If you're aware of this, that's different. But most people from the super level of the superficial, all right, I'm talking about superficial atomic level, people at the level of the superficial, when we're talking about the atomic level, are not aware of this. Okay, like when I was watching a commercial, it was a chocolate bunny commercial for Reese's, and they were playing the song Let's Get It On by Marvin Gaye. And so, you know, I made the argument that sex is cultivated, the desire for sex is cultivated within our consciousness, the material, the body, right? A desire for it is cultivated in different commercials like this. And so, you know, people may say, well, you can make a choice to be a whore, what have you, just because it's desire for it is cultivated within your consciousness doesn't mean that you should act upon it. And that's true if you're conscious. But if you are not aware that you're subliminally being programmed with these commercials to actually have sex, you are what we call a slave. Your pineal gland has been imbalanced. And so the point I'm trying to make is that, you know, just like in that Pink song, we're all following our asses. I'm better than the masses, but we're all following our asses. In other words, we're all following, you know, the reptilian brain trying to get stuff, but we don't have the knowledge to actually access what gives you stuff. You know what I mean? What gives you stuff, and what allows you to ground your desires into physicality. And so when it comes to reparations, since, you know, black people in particular are being targeted to focus on stuff instead of the divinity that makes stuff, it's going to trick off the dough. It's going to trick off the money. Because it's not a lot of money. I mean, if you give, like, black people, you know, for reparations for slavery, say $100,000, right, a piece. Do you know how quick $100,000 will go? Like, black folks, you know, many black folks, you know, may, you know, trick it off on after you get a Cadillac, and, you know, maybe you take one vacation or something like that, like, that money is going to go. You know, unless you're conscious, you know, you wouldn't necessarily think to invest that money in a business or, you know, at the superficial level. You know, you wouldn't think to, you know, take that money and put it in a bond or something like that. So by the time you reach retirement, then you're set. You know what I mean? Like, and that might be like one of the best things to do, especially if you're a younger black couple or a younger black person and you got a reparation. You would take that money and put it in the bank so it can accrue as much interest as possible. And so by the end, you know, by the time that you retire and you're drawing Social Security, you're drawing retirement from your job, you know, you say to yourself, oh, I've got that money in reparations. And so instead of it being $100,000, it's now, you know, $200,000. I've actually been able to multiply it 100% with, you know, putting it in the bank and letting it, you know, in a savings, and also maybe playing the stock market or something like that, and putting in some investments, you know, taking some of the money to flip a house. I don't know, whatever it is, whatever you can do to invest it you know, that is unlikely given the programming. Given the programming, your mind is not your own here. Money is not going to help you unless you have control of the mind, which is the tree of life. And you have to really understand brainwave frequencies to really understand what I'm talking about. You know, I always make the example, if I flash something in your consciousness, right? If I'm talking to you like on the street somewhere and I flash something in front of you, you know, you would likely not be able to tell because you're in a beta brainwave frequency of the ego. However, there's information that I showed you that you are not aware of. And so, unless you can get yourself into a very slow brainwave frequency, such as theta, which is like a frequency of hypnosis, there's information in your head that you don't know. You don't know what I showed you. You can't even get yourself there. Even Buddhist monks find it very difficult to get in that theta brainwave frequency. And so there's something I put into your head that makes me God, and that makes you a slave because you don't know what I showed you, and that affects you. The mind is the totality of all that has been disseminated and fed into the mind, and you don't get a choice. In this realm, you do not get a choice of what goes into your mind. And so because of that, and you're only focused on a very small fraction of information from the ego, and you can't access all those unconscious things that you saw but didn't see that actually affect you, going back to Freudian psychology and how your unconscious affects your, you know, basically puppeteers your ego. Sorry, you're not going to be able to make conscious choices. And black people, you know, many black people, I wouldn't say all black people, but from the superficial, many black people are not going to be able to make a conscious choice in terms of what to do with the reparation money. So the money will go very quickly. And this is a part of an agenda at the superficial level, because they want to paint a picture. Many of them want to paint a picture of black people can't be helped. We're just awful people, right? You know, look, we gave them money and look how they blew it, right? Okay, that's what what they want. Many of the people, or the people who puppeteer our reality, that's what they want to say. I mean, black people are just bad. You know, that's the stereotype. Look, we gave them the money, right? That's what they're saying. And so since we gave them the money and they tricked it all off, then it goes to show that, hey, they're really bad, right? That's what it's saying, all right? So I'm just kind of telling you the mentality of what, you know, of what they are, you know, saying about black folks, or what they will say, I should say, if the reparation money is given. And so this is justification for really doing away with Jews. Like I said, esoterically, blacks are considered to be Jews. And so going back to Nazi Germany with, you know, what you would call the, the final solution. And so from a superficial level, you know, we've seen the FEMA camps and stuff like that, and things that they have, you know, created, if you will, for, you know, for martial law and all of these different things. It really, you know, from a superficial level, I'm not talking about in actuality, because this whole world is what you would consider to be Maya or dream. I get it. But from the superficial realm, this is the final solution for getting rid of black people. It's saying, we paid you, and look how you destroy yourself. But the thing about it is, you know, I would rather you not pay me in money. I'd rather you pay me in knowledge, so I can actually know how to make money for myself. I don't want, you know, I don't want the money or whatever, because they say money doesn't grow on trees. I want the tree itself, you know, because the people who run this reality, they make money off of us, not because, you know, they're better, but because they're smarter. And why are they smarter? Because they have the sacred knowledge and we don't have the knowledge. They just keep us coming back over and over and over again to this hellhole because they have more knowledge than we do. They have more knowledge than we do. And so until you have control of the mind, it doesn't matter how much money somebody gives you. It's like somebody winning the lottery. A lot of times with those lottery stories, people end up poorer than they were before. Because why? Because of the mentality. It has nothing to do with the money as much as it has to do with the mental capacity to make money and to have a mentality of saving your money and not tricking off your money, and really using that money in a very sound way to, you know, to manifest more than what you have, and to gather more than what you have. And the thing is that the various constructs of the matrix, including hip-hop music, is designed to have you trick off the money. So it's like they facilitate an environment for you to fail, right? And then when you fail, they say, look at you, you failed. Well, you facilitated the environment for me to fail. You know, it's like, wow, you tricked off your money on Cadillacs and malt liquor or whatever the case is. Well, I mean, hey, you know, you put all that stuff in my music. And this music is especially, you know, effective because it goes past the frontal cortex, right, the pineal, into the temporal lobe, where you don't catch everything. You don't catch everything that's fed into your consciousness. So I'm listening to music, you know, thinking about sex and money and so forth, and not thinking about what's most important. Okay, what manifests sex, what manifests, you know, money, what manifests cars and houses and things like that. Everything is about the stuff. Everything is about the clothes and the jewelry and all of this stuff. You know, it's like, why do you keep putting that into my consciousness? Why don't you tell me some stuff that makes money, that makes cars, that makes jewelry? Because jewelry and the cars and so forth, those things carry a very low vibration. You know, if you're piss poor morally, you know, what is that going to really do for you? You know, when you're empty inside and you don't really, you know, you can't look at yourself in the mirror, if you will. You know, you can't enjoy the things that you have because you're focusing on the stuff as opposed to focusing on love, right? Focusing on love, love for yourself and love for others. And so I really wanted to point out the insidious agenda to really these reparations to not be connected to anything good. They've actually designed and conditioned us to trick off the money and to be right back where we started. And to use that as justification for mistreatment for future generations of black people at the superficial level. And so, you know, if we did receive reparations, you know, looking at it in hindsight, I think that it should be, you know, there should be conditions. I think there should be conditions on the money. You know, I think that, you know, I don't really know what those conditions should be per se, but I do believe there should be conditions. That it should be money used to, you know, start a business, that, you know, that money should be put away so it can accrue and grow by the time you get, you know, you retire or something like that, or, you know, if you accrue like a, you know, and if you're conscious then you shouldn't have any illnesses. That's a whole nother video. But from the superficial, you know, if you get an illness, then maybe you could take the money out, you know, earlier or what have you, because, you know, you might not make it to retirement. But, you know, it should be done and set aside in a way to where you're set not just in this incarnation, but your children to follow will also be set as well. And so you should have a program for yourself to where you know the money is going to build and it's going to grow, you know, or put the money together with other people, other black people within the community, so you guys can do something on a grand scale, because they've all taught us how to live from the superficial of the ego, right? It's about me and mine and all this stuff. But if we were thinking more, you know, together and putting our stuff together, then we would have more as egos. But they've taught us that, you know, I want my Cadillac, you know, I want my house, I want my cars, I want my jewelry, and it's all about mine. It's not really about us coming together. They do not want that. They do not want us to take the money, the reparations, come together to do something really big. And even if we did do that, it probably would be some type of insidious agenda to tear that down as well. You know, so I just want people to know the whole rationale behind the reparations, and how, you know, they'll try to use it as justification for really getting rid of black people eventually, you know, saying we did this and, you know, you took the money and you didn't do anything with it. You know, if you starve people's sacred ability to manifest and you're starving them, you know, they're not going to, you know, really honor the money the way that they should. You know, it's like, for example, if you've been starving me for 400 years and then you give me like some food, right? You give me like some crab legs and, you know, some steak and all of that stuff. You know, I'm not going to spread it out, if you will. You know, I'm going to eat it, and I'm going to eat it like it's like nobody's business. And it's going to look really ugly. You know what I mean? I'm going to have shells and stuff, you know, all over my hair and stuff like that. And, you know, it's just not going to be pretty. And I'm not even going to look at myself in a good way because you starved me for 400 years. And then when I look all crazy with the food all over the place and, you know, uncivilized eating this food, and, you know, you're going to say, look at how nasty and filthy and uncivilized and disgusting she looks. You really have a problem. Like, you seriously do. You know, for you to actually deprive someone, a race of people, you know, for so long of things, and then you give them something, and then when they don't actually do good with what you've given them, then you point the finger at them. To me, you're sick and you're disgusting. You know, and the people that govern this matrix reality, in my opinion, are sick and disgusting. And I didn't say anything that, you know, that suggests hate towards anyone. But the thing about it is that it is sick and disgusting when you do things like this to people. When you starve their sacred ability to manifest and then give them something and think that you have justification if they don't do good on it, that you can destroy them. You don't need a gavel. You need a mirror. That's what you need. And so the people who govern this existence, they would never be able to sit in front of beings like me. Never. That's why, you know, I'm supposed to be a lighter bee, right? In my next incarnation. Because you can't sit in front of this bee, okay? And spit that game to me about giving me reparations and so forth when you've already conditioned and programmed me to not do well with the money, you know? Well, I mean, I'm conscious now, so, you know, it's different. But the thing is that since I'm conscious, you know, you don't have the audacity to even sit in front of me with some BS. Because that's what it is. It's BS. So, you know, people like, you know, Marianne Williamson, or anybody else who's for, you know, these reparations, who's not conscious. And yes, that could be black people, white people, it doesn't matter. You know, we're all living aimlessly and unconsciously here. And so, you know, especially, you know, if you're a black person as well and you have an imbalanced pineal gland, it's you know, you're not going to see past the BS. And so your pineal gland, a balanced, more balanced pineal gland, allows you to see past the BS. Superficially, reparations, hey, give me the reparations. You know, I've been long overdue. Superficial. Pineal gland insight, oh, you've already conditioned me through the movie and television programming and churches and all these different things to trick off the money and focus on physical instead of the metaphysics, focus on the divine instead of the divinity. And so once I trick off this money, you want to say, haha, look at you, look what you did with the money. That's pineal, that's insight. And so the pineal is God. The pineal is God. The pineal sees past all the tricks of the trade. You know, I know all the tricks from Brixton, Kingston, right? like what you call it? What's that song? Lost Ones. You know, Lost Ones by what is it? What's the singer? Lauryn Hill. You know, she says, I know all the tricks from Brixton, Kingston. My pineal gland knows all the tricks. Okay? I know everything. So you can't get past me. You know, it's very seldom within a lifetime that you are blessed to find your equals. And so the thing about it is that because I can see past the constructs of the matrix and see past what you have planned, if you will, you know, I am your equal. I am your equal. And so I am not a slave. When it comes to the mind, I am not a slave. And I can see exactly what your intentions are. And it is my job to put light on a situation. And so people who are asleep in the matrix and looking at it from the mundane, superficial level will see that this is the intention. The intention is to look, something that looks good isn't always good. Something that glitters isn't always gold, basically. So I just wanted to point that out here, guys. And to really talk about the reparations things. That's something that, you know, from the superficial level of the matrix is out there. And you know, people are talking about, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, they've conditioned us through our music and programming to trick off that money as quick as it comes. $100,000 a person is not a lot of money at all. You know, that's like, you know, a night in Vegas. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, wait a second, I'm right back where I started from. You know, I mean, really, to be honest with you, it's not going to do any good. So yeah, guys, so thanks so much for, you know, watching this. I'm really curious to see, you know, comments, you know, that I'm going to get in terms of this one, because anytime we talk about race in the matrix, people are always up in arms. You know, they race, money, sex, like I said, these are very controversial topics I talk about. And you know, people are always very judgmental and egotistical and narcissistic when it comes to discussing these topics. That's why I try to be as sensitive as I possibly can, if you will. But you know, I don't, you know, I respect everybody. It doesn't matter. I respect all races. You know, this is not to say white people are bad or anything like that. I mean, look at my hue. Obviously, with my hue, you know, I'm not, you know, just mixed with black people. And so, you know, we are everyone in a way. But the thing is that the truth is the truth. The truth is the truth. And, you know, if you actually have knowledge, you know, in its totality of itself, then, you know, the truth will set you free. And so, you know, that's all I'm really seeking here is freedom. Freedom through truth. And the truth is there is wealth. There is wealth, not $100,000 in reparations, but there is wealth in your melanin. And so we must fight to discover the divinity within ourselves and get the knowledge. And so we don't need reparations. We don't need someone giving us something. We don't need God. We are God. We don't need someone. God gives you stuff. But when you are God, your divinity, the divinity makes the divine, and so it turns around. And so you're no longer a slave, but you are a God. And so that's what my channel is dedicated to. So thanks, guys, for watching, and I will see you in my next video.